Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of OpsCast, brought to you by marketingops.com and powered by all the Mo Pros out there. I'm your host, Michael Hartman, flying solo today. And today I'll be talking about email deliverability and trust, specifically where modern marketing outreach has crossed the line from helpful to harmful. And joining me to do that is my guest today is Jacqueline Freedman, CEO and founder of Monarch Advisory Partners, also a fellow Dallasite, and global head of advisory at the MarTech Weekly. Jacqueline works across both B2B and B2C organizations and has been increasingly outspoken about spam, cold outreach, thought leadership, and the real consequences of how marketing teams show up in buyers' inboxes. This episode is about why cold email is often just spam with better branding, how sales volume impacts deliverability more than marketers want to admit, and what B2B teams can learn from B2C when it comes to earning attention and trust. So welcome, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm about to tell you that my dog is going to bark.
It's all good.
Someone dared to come to the door. All right, well, let's get going here. It's funny, we were just talking a little bit before this about an example email that I got, but before we get into all that, let's walk us through your background a little bit. You were, because we said you work across B2B and B2C, which I do think is a little bit of a unique vantage point. Not many people I started in B2C, moved to B2B. But how'd your career evolve into that space, and how'd you end up, how do you think about marketing today from that background?
Yeah, for sure. So by no means did I plan out to work across all these different business models. I kept ending up in these environments where those lines either didn't really exist or it didn't matter. And so I've been fortunate in that I've worked with a lot of different startups of all shapes and sizes, both as an employee, but also as a consultant, of which include WeWork and Grammarly. We're dealing with lots of hyperscale. And so I've been very fortunate that all of these have
WeWork and Grammarly are very different kinds of
very different, but you'd be surprised how similar at the same time.
Yeah, I believe it.
The nuts and bolts are not that different. Just what the actual product is very different. Software versus virtual and physical.
Right.
But yeah, having worked in all these different kind of capacities, I was really able to realize that there's always a through line. It's always serving the customer. And that is not just through revenue and product, but of course, marketing. And so the beauty of it is B2C was able to train me how to respect folks' attention and really notice just how quickly people disengage. And it's only getting more and more the case as we get more bombarded, as our attention spans have been slowly declining. Yes. And then also with B2B, it's really trained me to understand the incentive structures, governance, systems that shape our behavior, but also just it's a different way of thinking. And at the same time, all these are not the ways, that's not a way to say it. Sorry. All that to say, I don't think in channels. I think they're all one. And I think more in systems between intent and friction and honestly bringing humanity back. And that is something I think B2B can learn from B2C more often than not.
Yeah. I mean, probably would describe myself, and others probably would be, as a serious person, but I still will poke fun at myself. And
oh yeah,
I think there's a lot to be enjoyed even when you can be serious. And so I think maybe what you're hinting at is maybe there could be a little more humanity brought into B2B communications in general, right?
For sure. I think something we mastered really well at WeWork in particular was the approachable professional. And that was the tone we set. And I think that is something every company should make sure that's the bare minimum. Unless, I understand if you're a governmental agency, very different strokes.
Right.
But across the board, everyone wants to talk to a person, especially in this world of AI and AI generated slop where it's just, you can tell there's no tone, and all these different aspects of reading comprehension that we didn't care about in school really are showing their muscle now. And so it's just bring back humanity into everyday conversations. And it's really noticeable.
Yeah. It's funny because I've talked about Grammarly. I avoided it, thought I never needed it. And about, maybe 18 months ago, I started using it. And now I'm I love it. And I like the
Oh, it's the
communications
best.
too, because there's a little bit of a gamification, right? For those who like to compare where they are and all that, but it's, it's fun and insightful, right? It goes like, oh, I'm actually making a little improvement here and there. So
Yes, without a doubt. I always kind of chuckle at folks who are naysayers of a tool like Grammarly,
yeah,
not because anyone is perfect at grammar or anything like that, because it's so much more than that. But I've always used it as my second set of eyes. The second the freemium model came out in 2015,
yeah,
I immediately started using it because I was a team of one and I needed another set of eyes because we didn't have a formal approval process in place for emails. And so I just needed help to make sure
yeah,
I didn't send something out to thousands upon hundreds of thousands of people in the wrong tone, in the wrong this, you name it. And so,
right.
and also make sure it was grammatically correct.
Well, or intentionally not. Like sometimes I ignore the corrections too, right? Because
Oh
sometimes
yeah, I don't
I think
accept it
there's
at face value because it's not
yeah,
always right. And
that's
also I
right.
have a writing style. I don't want to make mine sound anything less than myself.
Yeah,
And so,
you're not an
um,
English professor.
no, much to probably my own chagrin. I would probably enjoy it, but not that much.
Well, I mean, every once in a while, especially when I get corrected a bunch from my writing with Grammarly, I will think, I really wish I had paid more attention to that diagramming sentences when I was in seventh grade
Yes.
that I nearly failed.
I never
'Cause-
got grammar taught to me ever. I switched schools a few times. And so I just happened to always miss the lesson. And so, yeah, I have to do it all phonetically in my head or talk in order to actually understand it.
yeah,
Learned more
it's
actually learning another language than in
oh, that's
English
so
itself.
funny, right? That's crazy. Well, English is ugh,
It's a special place, that's
it's
for sure.
there's so many things that don't make sense. There's so many
Yeah,
things.
there's far too many exceptions to every
Yeah,
rule.
yeah. All right. Well, I could spend it all like a whole episode talking about grammar and the crazy things about English language, but we were going to talk about email, cold email, and that. But I think I've noticed this too. Like you're very direct on LinkedIn or wherever talking about email, and that cold email is still spam. So I know
Yes, very
that a
much
lot
so.
of us in marketing ops get pushed, especially I think especially from sales teams who want to push the boundaries on this stuff.
Oh
So
yeah.
how do you think about framing that with for marketing ops folks and maybe with other teams when you're working with them?
Yeah, it's always going to be a struggle between what your legal team allows, what your legal team is willing to risk, because there's an implied business risk in every decision you make. And so,
Yes.
really navigating how to mitigate and minimize, but also not impact business objectives is really hard. So, it doesn't matter where you're at, what set of variables you're dealing with, that is what you're up against. So there are ways to think through it and set the guardrails and parameters. So one, you need to find out what countries are we working with?
Yeah.
What regulations do we actually have to abide by? And what are the consequences if we don't? And so that's all part of that risk process that really your legal team should be um, focusing on. However, sometimes they could use a little extra help if that's not their maybe specialty.
Yeah. Which is
But
not in a lot of places. They do
it's not.
contracts.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah, privacy lawyers are a dime a dozen. They're incredible, and that's where sometimes you can educate that lawyer on like, hey, here's some resources that might be helpful, and they
Yeah.
will understand. So yeah, I am a huge fan of legal first. My father's a lawyer. That's like
Yep.
the my way my brain works in the best way possible. But that's first and foremost. But also figure out what you are and aren't willing to risk. And so like paid lists, there's never a time or place. It's just not worth it. You're going to get put on spam traps, and that's going to impact your entire brand's reputation. And if
Yeah.
you can't send an email to someone who consented to it, how are you going to have and conduct a business?
Right.
So you have to really think big picture in that regard. But as you mentioned, I am very direct as a person, whether you like it or not. Sorry. I
Sorry,
swear
not
I'm a
sorry.
friendly face. Yeah, well, like I mean it in a friendly way. It's never,
No, I
I just
know.
don't like wasting time on nonsense when I know we have the answer. Like why sugarcoat it? And so I think the concept of outbound and cold, those are just really fancy ways of saying spam. And it's just soft language when actually accountability is required.
Yeah.
And same thing goes for sales teams. Like, we've got our outbound, we're doing this, we're building out our, future pipeline. It's like, it's the same thing. Same thing goes for like the rebrand of go to market. It's the exact same thing. Nothing has changed. So
Yeah.
let's stop imposing on others and actually help them. And so there are ways to do the concept of paid lists, but in less, I don't want to say intrusive, but less gross, honestly, frankly,
Right.
ways. Like, you can
Like more
retarget with
respectful.
ads. Yes, it's more respectful. You can do softer touches of like looking at someone's LinkedIn profile, and all these differ, of course. If you're in B2B, that makes more sense. B2C, it's not really going to be the same. Instagram, Pinterest, you name it, or TikTok are going to be much more of the avenues to go about this. But there are ways to create intent signals that don't create and perpetuate the general fatigue of how many emails do I need to mark as spam today. And also, you don't really want that to be associated with your brand.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think your framing of this at the beginning about risk tolerance is a really important one. I mean, and that's kind of a way I've done that before too. Like, I have a scenario, I probably talked about it here before, where I was new to a job, CMO came to me, said the CEO wants to do right by a partner publication that had just highlighted the company and wanted to share our database basically with them to try to get. And I was like, first thing I did was went and looked at our privacy policy and was like, we basically say we're not going to do this, right? And I was like, I had to get called. I was only a few months in this job, and I was scared. But I was
you don't want to give up all your political capital on something that you weren't planning on even dealing with.
So I'm going to call with the CEO and CMO and me, and I'm going, I don't think we should do this. That said, like, if you really want to do this, this is the only way I think we should do it. And I gave him a kind of an outline of what I thought would work, which just kind of shielded us and the other place. It made it more difficult and required a third party to be involved. Ultimately, that became too much, and we never did it. So I was glad, but like,
good.
I had to go through this process. Like, I couldn't just say no because you're right. Like, I realized that there was a little bit more to it. And honestly, it wasn't my decision, right?
Exactly. That's where that risk and business objective balance, you're not in charge of that. And that is above most people's pay grade on determining it. But thankfully, there are some glimmers of light. So, like, for example, Gmail has finally, after years and years, is really listening to the consumer and the customers of, we're getting too many emails, we're getting this. Of course, they've had, inboxing with different tabs and promotions, things like that. But now they're doing, almost a global unsubscribe management option. And so all of these things from a email marketer or a spammer's perspective makes it harder.
Yeah.
But at the same time, from a human to human perspective, it makes your life better. So I'm actually a huge advocate for it because we need to get with the times. And if the technology and the systems we're using don't match the practices and what we're seeing day to day, like, how are we going to move forward? And so I'm grateful some of these changes are finally coming into play.
Yeah, I think it's my experience. I've seen some places where I've been working lately have had struggles with, even though they had an existing brand and reputation, changing email platforms and starting up a new IP, have really struggled because of some of that stuff.
Oh yeah. It's not a magic fix. There are very few magic fixes besides just consistent, daily doing things the right way, which sounds really boring, but it's true.
So, I mean, I don't think I'm the only one who's seen and heard of like deliverability or inbox placement kinds of issues. recently, especially with like things like IP warming or that. Kind of what's your take on like what are the things that are commonly causing people's deliverability to go down or inbox placement to go down that they could try to avoid?
Yeah, I think the most straightforward response is deliver what the customer is expecting. And if they aren't expecting your email, that doesn't sound like a good starting place. So really think about it as a relationship. Like, you go out on a date. You both consented to be on this date. One of you decides, I don't want to be here anymore. But you keep being like, we're going on a date, right? And it's the same thing. And so this is where I struggle, where B2B and B2C get like treated as these separate instances, when in reality, no, it's still a relationship. And you treat the other person how they want to be treated. Do they want to receive your newsletters? Great, because they want to be in the know. Do they want to receive every promo? Great, they're looking for a deal. That's awesome.
Right.
Do they want to be in touch with your sales team? Great, they want to speak to you. But you have to follow what they want. And so those short-term like decisions actually impact the long run. Because also, and this is going to be kind of a hot take, but inbox placement providers, as much as I love them, they're not actually real. In that, if you think about it, no one can replicate what an individual user does in their inbox, which sometimes they're looking at an email 30 times over the course of 3 years because it has the information of something they really need from a brand. Like I have, for example, it's not a marketing email, but I have an email with my accountant I look at to get my EIN number. I should just write it down somewhere else. And I do probably have it there. I just know it's there. And I probably looked at that email 45 times in 2 years. But that is not a regular behavior that an inbox placement provider could identify.
Sure.
And yes, that's a specific use case. However, a lot of people use their inboxes as search functions. They're like, can I find a deal? I was
doing that earlier.
Yeah. Exactly. And so there is no inbox placement provider that can replicate human creativity to not have rules. And so all that to say, there is a place for tools like that, mainly to identify the signals of things aren't working and help you figure out how to navigate it. But it is typically much more complex than it seems.
Yeah. I mean, this is the hard part. And even why I stopped saying deliverability. We had somebody on a couple of years ago and I saw him speak too, is talked about deliverability versus inbox placement. It was my first like, like those are not the same, right? Correct.
So they're very related. There's a Venn diagram, but they are different.
The overlap on that Venn diagram is not as big as I thought it was, for sure.
And that's also very fair, especially if you're not a deliverability expert, which I definitely know I'm not. Yeah. It's a fair assumption.
Yeah. I'm in that stage of knowledge where I remember somebody's talked about, but there's this one where you kind of go from like, a little, so you think you know more than you actually know. And then you get to a point where you know, enough, you go like, there's a whole lot more I don't know.
The Kruger effect.
Yes, that's it.
Yep. Yeah. It's definitely, I think, those who are at this level recognize you know nothing. Like you know enough to be dangerous, but you at the same time know absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And you know when to seek that expertise from someone who does know a whole lot more. It's like, who has the equivalent in our field of a PhD in this? Let me confer with the professional, because I know I'm not.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm struggling with, and when you were describing this, is I agree with it in general sense, but one of those is, and I'm thinking about my own personal experience, because in general, I try to, because I want to see what other companies do. This is not an invitation for people to start adding me to their list, by the way. I rarely unsubscribe to stuff or mark things as spam. I just don't do it very much because I'm curious. I want to see what happens. And I find it's interesting. Every once in a while I have to go to my spam folder in a Google account, and I see stuff. They're like, oh, that's not really spam. I don't change it, generally speaking, unless it is something I would know I was looking for. But what I struggle with is like, so for example, my kids are now older. There were online retailers that we bought stuff from when they were really young, and I continue to get stuff from them, even though I probably have not opened a single email in years and years. Yeah. So to me, on the one hand, I'm not sending signals that I'm actively saying not, like, in other words, I haven't sent anything explicit, stop sending me stuff, but implicitly I've kind of like, I just am not engaging at all. So like, how important is it to do, like, look at both implicit and explicit kinds of signals?
Yeah, it's tricky because also we didn't even factor, if you have pixels turned off, if you have images turned off, that pixel is not picking up if you opened it unless you clicked. And so there's even more to it. But if you'd asked me this question a couple months ago, I would have probably had a different response than I would today, only because I've seen the light of another perspective that I don't fully agree with, but I appreciate the perspective. So yes, your children have outgrown, let's say, Fisher Price when you bought that 10 years ago. But you could have grandkids. So from Fisher Price,
I'm not sure I like that.
I understand. However, you didn't opt out, so they're respecting your subscription, right. And also you might become a customer again. It's a bit of a fresh perspective. It's directly from the thinking of Delaquist. Like, that's how he thinks about it. And I struggle with it because it goes like against everything I've ever learned and known, in that, like, you're unengaged, we don't need to send to you. When he has brought in a new perspective where actually your unengaged list and audience is some of the most interesting. And that's where the most important things can be learned. And I'm still honestly wrapping my head around it because it's just such a different way and different, it's just thought-provoking. It's almost an experiment amongst the things we've learned and really questioning the status quo. Yeah. That said, if you're working on your deliverability and you're struggling, do not focus on your unengaged users. You need to focus on your engaged users. You need to focus on your transactional emails so that you can warm up those IPs. But don't forget, even if you're on a shared IP pool, you also have to warm it up a little bit. It needs to get to know you too. Sure. And that often gets overlooked. And so I don't know if I even answered the question, but there's a lot of, it's so much more complex than just it is working, it isn't working. Yeah. Without knowing, I would say 30 different variables you have to think about first. And then there's more of a mind map and flowchart to go through after, those answers.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And that's the point, like, that's part of the point of this. It's funny because, like, that scenario you just gave, like, actually, I'm with you. Like, I'm torn because on the one hand, it kind of makes sense. And it reminds me of, I guess, when I was doing search optimization stuff where you had, like, everyone talks about the long tail, right? The long tail, there was a lot of interesting stuff there that you wouldn't expect. That's really interesting.
I struggle with it.
It is. I mean, I'm like, okay.
It's not as cut and dry as I thought it was.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it doesn't really bother me because it's not like I have intentionally made the choice to just let that stuff come in. Now, if I was an inbox zero person, which I am not.
I am. I have a separate fake account with all of those types of emails that I'd never engage with unless I'm looking for something. And it's fascinating to see how many lists 10 plus years later I'm still on, because I started it for competitive research and analysis years and years and years ago. Yeah. And so I understand the plight.
Yeah. Okay. So because this is hyper complex and like scenarios I hadn't even thought about even coming into this, right, that you just brought up, was it called Delaquist?
Delaquist, yes. He was just on my podcast. That's why it's top of mind, because I was helping edit it. And I was reminded just how thought-provoking. He brings a fresh perspective of things from, I almost consider him like a philosopher of email. And it's so not what you're expecting in the best possible way.
No, that's interesting. No, I love that. I love it. All right. We'll have to see if we can point people to that when it comes out. For sure. So it's complicated, lots of nuance. You and I are fairly deep in this, but we don't consider ourselves experts. How would someone who's listening to this know, like, we're having struggles? We think we kind of know, we've worked with our IT team to get, all the settings right, yada, yada, but we're still having problems. We contacted our email provider. Yeah. how do you know when it's time to bring in someone who's truly an expert? And then how do you find him?
Yeah, great series of questions. There's a couple. It depends. How sudden has the shift been? Do you know if something happened in the past week, or is it just a slow burn? It's been happening for a long time and you've just ignored it? Because there could also be actual outages that caused it, like just in real time Q1 2026. There's been a number of outages across Microsoft, and that's caused issues with Gmail in its own capacity and certain ESPs. So, and even Yahoo. So it's very specific. If it's an outage, it's rare that it happens, but guess what? Rarities become less and less rare these days as a population just keeps scaling everything we're doing.
Right.
And so definitely identify if it's a one-off and if it goes back to normal. If it is a consistent and slow and steady decline, and you're also not noticing unsubscribes or other important, what I usually consider to be vanity metrics, I consider them to be signals more than anything else.
Right.
I think they're extremely important, just not in the way people use them.
Yeah.
So if you're starting to see lagging in places where the numbers just aren't adding up, the first line of defense is, do you already have deliverability platforms? Do you have Everest or Inbox Monster or I don't even remember the rest of the tools. They all get bought out every 3 seconds. But do you already have existing platforms that you're monitoring things? No, that's okay. You might not need it in the long run, but do you have any support within your ESP? Do they have deliverability services?
Right.
Caveat, they're not the best, but they exist and they can at least help with initial components. And if that is not changing anything, that's when you need a deliverability expert. And the easiest way, frankly, actually is just going to the community email geeks and asking in the deliverability channel, like, hey, I need help. See if they can help. There's a lot of really wonderful people who will diagnose things just on the spot for you. But also if it's a bit more complex, you might need to hire someone. I've always been able to find my folks through that or LinkedIn. Okay. But there is a very large difference between a real deliverability expert and someone who says they are.
Yeah.
And so
someone you get off Upwork.
Correct. Yeah. If anyone is just, maybe the red flags are the most important things to notice of whether or not someone's an expert. So if they're saying they can get you into the primary inbox, don't trust them. If they're saying everything I do automatically gets you out of spam, don't trust them. There are no guarantees. It is a special sauce of many variables. Think of it as like a recipe. Just because you replace one thing, it's going to have another chain reaction elsewhere. So it is not just cut and dry. But yeah, I think if anything, actually the red flags are easier to spot than the green flags with someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably one of those ones kind of going back to the Kruger effect, right? Where the people who know best are going to be seem less confident.
Correct. They're going to be much more judicious. Why can't I say that right now? Judicious with their words. Right. It's just beginning today for me, but yes, they'll be much more judicious.
Judicious. I got you.
There we go. Much more judicious with their words, and always be mindful of like, hey, this might change. This might not work. We want to be mindful of this. And so there's going to be a lot more of education on this overall strategy, not to mention just the short-term quick fixes and double checking of things. So
it reminds me,
be mindful of quick fixes.
Yeah. No, it reminds me of this concept of the Cynefin framework that one of our guests, probably now, I want to say half a year ago, but it might've been longer. My sense of time is off. And it was a really, it was a really interesting idea that I didn't know about. But the short version is people confuse a situation as a complex situation. There's not necessarily an answer, which is what we're talking about, versus complicated, which is it may be difficult to understand, but there's an answer to how you quote fix something. And if you treat a complex one, that it's a Welsh word, so I'll have to spell it because it doesn't make any sense. Cynefin. So Cynefin framework. Anyway, it is. I think about it all the time. And this is a great example where like the example would be complicated would be an F1 car, right? Highly complicated machine, but someone who has the right training, experience, understands it, like can probably fix something if there's a problem, right? Whereas,
correct.
I mean, the almost extreme example that we used was like D-Day, right? Highly complex, almost chaos, right? Which there's actually two other ends of the spectrum that this is in the middle of, where you don't know what the right answer is, right? So the solution to that is try lots of things, right? Until you see what has the effect. But you also have that, call it the butterfly effect, unintended consequences, right? Like, so when you do something, there's a little bit of a risk of being overconfident in taking that action, right? Especially if it's one that you can't back out of.
Without a doubt. And I'm always happy anytime Ray Bradbury get brought up with the butterfly effect.
Was that him who came up with that?
Yeah, it was in his short story, The Sound of Thunder, which is one of my favorite short stories.
So even though I'm an engineer, like people are always surprised, I was not a science fiction reader ever. Like I really wasn't.
Yeah, I'm not really either, but I just have a certain proclivity for Ray. I don't know. He knows what he's doing. I wish he was still around to keep writing because need him more than ever. But he's just an excellent writer.
Yeah, it's a little bit frightening when I need to get back to it this year of going back and reading what I would call classics, or at least books that were like had lots of influence over people. And there's some that are like I'm reading them and I'm like, it's a little bit too close to home.
Yeah, Fahrenheit 451 is a little too close to home at the moment. So yeah, Sound of Thunder is a nice reprieve for the most part.
See, I was thinking like Animal Farm, but you know,
same.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now we don't need to get into a literature podcast. Let's not do that.
Well, I did say I did want to maybe have an English major in a different life. So
that's right. Okay. So maybe like you mentioned, like Google has changed some of their stuff, which is playing into deliverability and inbox placement situation for some people. But how much of what people are experiencing as email marketers is maybe marketing versus sales versus just the email provide ISPs and stuff like that?
Yeah, I will always stand by if you're doing what the requirements are and what you're supposed to be doing, you're going to be fine. So, for example, if you're an immediate adopter of what the latest legislation is going to be or is becoming, if you are following the latest rules from specific senders and the postmaster's guidance for Yahoo, Gmail, you name it, you're going to be fine. That said, unless your sales team is ruining it. But those are two separate things, ultimately. If you're doing the right things, you'll be able to get back on the right track. If sales is outpacing, it is far exceeding, it's the only thing your company does, you're going to have some issues. And they're very, very hard to come back from. And also, if you talk to anyone who's gone through a horror story of something like this happening, they will tell you, never again. It's never allowed to happen again. They refuse to make it something they have to fix because it is a really difficult, lengthy process. It can take years in some cases. And so if you're doing the right thing, you'll be rewarded. So do the right thing. The golden rule applies.
So on the sales side, are we talking, I mean, I was in sales, I would send emails, but I would do them directly, right? One-on-one kind of things. Are you talking about that kind of stuff or more about like things where they're using a platform that allows them to send essentially mass email, even though it might not be as big of a audience as say a marketer might have for a general email, but is that the real culprit here?
It's definitely amplified. They're still culprits, both of them. Okay. They all require an unsubscribe. I'm just talking about the US. You can't there's like very skirted potential rules with GDPR where you can be like, oh, we have, some sort of business relationship already, but no, you don't. And same goes SL in Canada. Like there are very explicit rules of what you can and can't do. And so there is the issue of enforcement. There is a lot of lack of accountability. You can have a law and it's not followed. Feels a little dystopian. I wonder why. And so there are, I don't want to say gray areas because I don't want people to think they have opportunity to take advantage. Right. But you can't, it's kind of like an asymptote. Like the limit does not exist, but it gets really close. So why try to cross it? And so you have to have a balance without a doubt. And I don't want to, rid of people's jobs on sales. However, if you're just mass sending to large amounts of people, it's not very personalized. It is not super specific. You want them to be like, oh, this person wrote this because of my experience, my this, my that. You're going to be much more inclined if someone reads an article you wrote and is like, hey, we know so-and-so from this one company, small world. And that is going to immediately take the guards down or put someone less on guard and less unwilling to engage and speak with you. And so bringing the humanity back, and you can't bring humanity back at scale easily. And that's a good thing. Not yet. It's a good thing.
No, I think it's a good thing too. I say not yet because I don't know. I don't know if it's fear or hope or some other weird feeling.
All of the above.
I do think it's going to happen sooner than we think. Sooner than every prediction I thought about AI type stuff has been way off by like factors of I don't even know what.
I agree and I disagree. I think it's possible, but I have yet to see the possibility. I mean, I think everyone can relate. Their GPT or their prompts never follow directions correctly. And so hallucinations, right? Exactly. Hallucinations happen all of the time. Yeah. And unless you are, and this goes back to really the systemization and governance, like if you have really strict guardrails that your AI cannot get around and circumvent, okay, great. However, I mean, we're living in a world now where there's complete and total platforms just for agents to talk to each other, and they're creating their own religion. So right. I have a questionable perspective on what is actually possible in terms of this. And so I think humanity will win out no matter what. And that's maybe too simplistic and overly optimistic, but people can read through it and we're only getting better. And the media literacy around it is becoming more and more, which is a good thing.
I lean towards a little bit towards what you're saying, but also towards, I think, as this stuff kind of grows and becomes more ubiquitous or common, the value of true connection and human connection is going to be much higher value.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a great example, you and I have met in person a few times. I have a feeling this conversation is more enriched and there's more trust because we have met in person. Mm-hmm. And that makes a huge difference. And I'm fortunate that, we're both in the same general like metroplex and city and things like that, but that's not always true. And yes, you can make connection virtually, but nothing quite beats humans. It just doesn't.
No, look, I've worked with teams globally, and I think there's a couple in particular where I worked with colleagues that were in Asia. And it's funny to me because so many businesses here sort of treat Asia as one big sort of common thing. And I'm like, every country is different.
It's not smart.
Every single country is different. And
every city, everywhere.
Yeah. And what I found is the relationships that I completely changed for the better after we met in person. And it didn't take very much.
Makes a difference.
Right? It's just like
exactly
being able to like be there and talk to somebody and shake their hand or give them a hug or whatever that is. Right? It just made remote conversations different.
Exactly. And zoom it out. What if they speak multiple languages, but they have a preferred language and you're not emailing them in that language? Like these are just the immediate things you can easily dissect and recognize, oh, wait, I'm not actually respecting this other person on the other end in the way they would like to be respected. I mean, even this week, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, they sent a bunch of emails to folks who speak English and German and in Spanish. Wires get crossed. Things happen, but it doesn't instill trust.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. All right, so one of the things we talked about, I want to bring it back to one of the things we first talked about, where you and I both have had experience with B2B and B2C marketing worlds. And we talked a little bit about how B2B could learn, marketers could learn from B2C. Maybe can you go a deal deeper? What do you think that means? Like what kinds of things would you think would be useful?
Yeah, for B2B, I think seriousness is very much confused for credibility. And an easy example on the B2C side to explain is like Wendy's social media. The reason why they're so successful is because you can tell there's not an approving committee along that versus, and that also means there's going to be some misses and some mistakes and be a little messy, but guess what? That's human to be a little bit messy. And so when things are either too perfect, too crisp, too everything, you can just tell. And if anything, I think psychologically it exposes the fact that everyone is scared to sound human. Yeah. And so it ultimately undermines the initial thought of credibility and authority. And so everyone is calling themselves, as an example, an agentic platform, an AI native, AI first. It means nothing now. It's just jargon. It's product marketing. And that means you mean nothing, which means you're invisible. People want to talk to people. People want to understand what you actually do and understand it from your tagline. Like, it's easy to use examples like B2C, like Nike, just do it. It just makes sense. It's easy. It's straightforward, and it gets lost in the sauce when you're like, oh, we're a compounding engine for AI, this, that, and the other. And it's like, are you really? Like, what does that even mean? If that. They think, well, and to your point, they want to be a thought leader, but you can't lead with thoughts. Right. You have to lead with actual principles, action, ideas, concepts that people can understand. If people don't understand you, you can't lead. And so you have to break it down in ways. It's like a really great teacher. They can make something super complex, to your Welsh saying that I'm not going to be able to say. Make something super complex, super simple. Yeah. And then once you understand the bare basics, all right, now we're going to dive in deeper and understand more. Yeah. But you have to grasp someone's attention. You have to bring them in, reel them in with something and lure them into they can meet you where you want them to start at the starting point. And I think a lot of people are jumping straight to, all right, this is the buzzword, this is the word, this is the way we're going to get folks to come in the door. And it's like, actually, I think it's a repellent ultimately.
Yeah, I think I haven't gone and done this in a while, but there was a point in time where every once in a while I would just I'd see something about some B2B company. I go to their website if I didn't know much about them, and I'd go try to read their homepage, and I'd take 5 minutes. I'm like, I don't know what you do. Like, lots of words on here. But
yeah, a good friend of mine, actually, she created a no BS detector. She was just vibe coding and wanted to make it. And it's actually pretty accurate. You just plug in, I've plugged in a bunch of vendors and they're like 75% BS. And you're like, ooh, okay, good to know.
I love that.
And I'll have to send you the link because it's excellent. Even if it's just for yourself to be like, do I sound like a fraud? Am I a fraud? I don't know.
So in the early days of the web really blowing up, there was a bunch of I guess they would be editors for tech magazines and stuff like that, who got together and they created a website that was called the Buzzsaw. And I wish it was still around, because they would just take verbatim the pitches they would get and post them. And it was just such slop.
It sounds like that needs to come back into place.
Yes.
I mean, I think you're equipped. I think you could make it happen.
It sounds like we need an AI agent to do that with no humanity.
There you go.
It'd be the B2B version of dad jokes, maybe.
I'm never upset by a dad joke. I My husband rolls his eyes at me a lot for all the puns. And I don't mind. I don't care. I love it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just like the millennial in me. I'm not sure, but doesn't matter. I love a wordplay.
There we go. Wordplays are great. All right. How about, and I think we're probably going to have to maybe wrap it up here, but maybe the flip
Yeah,
side.
I
right?
do. If it's helpful, I have 30 more minutes before my next meeting.
No,
But I don't.
do not.
I want to be mindful. Yeah,
I do not. I wish I could. But
all good.
So we've kind of bashed B2B marketers a little bit. Are there any things that B2C marketers could learn from B2B marketers from what you've seen?
Oh, for sure. I think B2C completely over indexes on its creativity. It is always designing the most wild, out there concepts, campaigns, but there's no actual, not just durability, but thematic concept. Like there's no tent poles that stay the same. And a great example is the Super Bowl. Spend so much money. Exactly. Spend so much money on this campaign and it's done. Why would you do it like that? It should either be the starting point of an entire campaign for the next 12 months or the ending point of like, all right, now we're going to introduce the new thing. And that is something, because of its rigidity, that B2B excels at a bit more.
Yeah.
The concepts are a bit more long lasting, and you can be shipping a lot of software and things like that, but it's still not as new in the same way B2C typically is. And so that rigor just, it helps stack what is complex, and it makes it easier, honestly. And so not everything's a one-off moment. It's more consistent and broad, which can be its own problem too. You
Right.
can have one good thing and it creates other problems there too. But you need to have systems, thoughts, campaigns that scale. And same goes for autonomy for your folks. If you're allowing the Wendy's social media person, you know what, maybe that subject line or that silly this, that, and the other, like, is it really a big deal? If anything, it would be exciting to look for a funny CTA. And I know I intentionally try to do that because after years and years of learn more, read more, explore more, I want to have fun and I want to be unexpected in my and the way I speak with businesses and things like that.
No, I love the idea of giving people guidelines and autonomy and not punishing them if they go over the line. I mean, it's a teaching, but like you can't let it just continue on.
Exactly.
Without.
Well, and it's the prime example of your whoopsie email typically does better than anything else.
Yep.
Because one, you showed your humanity, and two, you made a mistake.
Right.
Who doesn't want to notice it?
Right.
And so sometimes it's actually a good thing. I'm not suggesting ever start testing mistakes, but it's not a mistake if you learn something from it. And I know that's like a life saying, but it's also, particularly an email, it's so low grade. We're not saving lives. We're sending an email. It's zeros and ones.
Yeah.
It's not much.
Yeah.
So not to degrade it because I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny because like I think it's funny that you and I, in my head, I was like, I wonder if she's going to reference the Super Bowl. So for those who are listening later, we're recording this a few days before the Super Bowl in 2026. So that's why it's top of mind probably for both of us. But I think just in general, a lot of B2C commercials, advertising, whatever, I find myself sort of scratching my head. They're entertaining. At the end of it, I'm going like, but I don't understand how this ties to what you do. And so I go, try to be generous. Is it all about building brand and like recognition and recall? Okay. Seems like an expensive way to do that.
It is a very expensive way. And re-referencing my conversation with Dela, your inbox is the cheapest advertising platform. Use accordingly.
Yeah.
And those impressions cannot be beat on a cost per person, cost per click, you name it.
It's also, I think the way I'm going to sort of summarize today is like, if you treat the people who are on the other end of whatever you're sending via email, right, you can build trust or you can tear it down.
Yes. And both are very easy.
Well, building trust takes time, right?
It takes time, but it's not hard.
Like, but losing trust is pretty easy. Like that.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't take much to do that, or at least start. I think it takes more effort or more times of building the trust than it does to times to undo. Like it's almost if you have two, if you have something that tears down trust, it's like taking two out while you're putting one in for each time you're building trust.
For sure. But I do want to push. I don't think trust is hard. Keeping it is hard. Because I think most folks, I mean, we can get philosophical. It's like, is everyone nasty, British, and short, or is everyone much more thoughtful? And so do you start assuming positive intent? You might not, and that's okay. You're not for everyone. But I think most people want you to succeed. And whether that's a company, whether that's a product, they're like an example. They don't want to buy your product and then not work. That's not what they want. And so as long as you consistently show up both in the things you're selling, the way you guys are as a company, and when it's more unified and you can tell, oh, this is the culture they bring to the table, and this is how they interact with the real world, the more trust there is. When there's a disconnect between what maybe leadership says on one way and your customer support says in a different capacity, that's where trust erodes, and that's not even marketing related.
Right.
And so it's not as hard as people. It's hard to maintain, without a doubt.
Fair enough. I can agree with that. So
doesn't make it easy, but
no,
I think it's simpler than many assume it to be.
Yeah. What you're also describing, regardless of the interaction point with a customer, prospect, client, whatever, it's an opportunity to either continue to build and maintain trust or to lose it. And so if it's inconsistent, it's easier to erode it faster if you're inconsistent across those different interaction points than it is if you're, you can. Okay. Yeah. I think we're good there. We're aligned.
Yeah. And I think I can say one last thing. I would also say those values that you present publicly have to be felt internally, and that will inform your deliverability. That will inform your marketing structure. So it's far more important than people think. And, you had to go into that room with the CEO and CMO. And ultimately, it was actually a philosophical question. What do we agree to? What do we promise to our customers? And which promise are we willing to follow or take back? And so it's not trying to get that existential, but that's truly at the core of it.
No, it's interesting because since we're in Dallas, right? I don't know that it's still this way, but Southwest Airlines was the epitome of that, right? The culture internally really manifested itself in the way that they interacted with their customers, like kind of across the board.
It's going to be interesting how it has or hasn't changed. I haven't taken a flight just yet since the switch.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, hey, this has been a ton of fun, Jacqueline. This is great.
Sure has.
We have to get together again sometime since we're in the same
city.
But
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we love it. And I know you've got a little bit of a slog left for the rest of the day, so I'll wish you luck on that.
It's all good.
If folks want to continue this conversation or pick your brain or learn more, follow up what you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the best way is LinkedIn. I embarrassingly am on there a lot. Don't DM me because I probably won't see it, but you can try. But I
send her a cold email.
Yeah, you'll immediately marked as spam, and don't think I won't remember. But no, LinkedIn's definitely the best place, or you can go to my website at monarchadvisorypartners.com.
Awesome. Well, it's been a ton of fun. I know we could have gone on for a while, for a lot of different topics. So I appreciate that. So thank you as always. And then as always to our longtime and new listeners, watchers, now that we've got video, we appreciate you and all the support. If you have ideas for topics or guests or want to be a guest, you can reach out to Naomi, Mike, or me. We'd be happy to get the ball rolling. Until next time. Bye, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks.